Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Brony Debates. I hope you're all doing well out there. This is pretty interesting. We've had 3 debates in a row that are roughly centered around this whole old versus new topic. This was not intentional, but it's we've gotten some pretty good conversations out of it. And a couple of weeks ago, when I was looking for topic suggestions, Silver Quill posted this one. He said, do classic comic concepts of good and evil still apply? And I said, because I wasn't 100% sure what that meant, so I ran it past Heather for a second opinion, and she wasn't sure what it meant either, so I guessed and said, like, the dichotomy of from what we'd expect to see out of 1980s cartoons like G.I. Joe, where it's very basic and obvious, and might be where we get the phrase cartoonishly evil. And asked Silver if that was an accurate description. He replied to the tweet, said, I view it as that we live in an era that emphasizes flawed heroes and sympathetic villains. Many consider icons like Superman to be outdated. A second casualty of that is that the anti-hero no longer holds any meaning. So, joining us tonight, we've got Silver Quill. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, shut up.
Indeed.
I'm doing quite well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to get to the stream here. So, real quick, what made you want to talk about this?
There was a news article in the New York Times on Sunday, July 24th, 2022, titled "The Anti-Hero's Last Gasp." And I was intrigued, and I read about it, and had it in the back of my mind when you were asking for suggestions.
Mm-hmm. All right. Is there a link to that article somewhere that I might put it in the description? Anybody who wants to can catch up with us.
I will search it out.
Okay. And while you're doing that, let's say hi to everybody else. We've got DJ Skywalker joining us tonight. How are you doing, sir?
Glad to be back. Hoping to have a fun conversation, especially with the dear Silver here once again.
Yep. Should be pretty good. We got Cordero joining us. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to our Combat Sports Masterclass, where we talk about everything martial arts and combat sports.
Yeah, that was the first half of the chat until we got started here.
So at least you could have fooled me, based on that chat. I'm down for that. Can we do that instead? Can we just talk about MMA and...
You know what? We'll I'll put a pin in it, and we'll do it next. We'll do it next debate. We'll just headcanon what martial arts everybody knows.
Perfect. Is weight cutting cheating?
Well, shoot, that's another conversation too. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a combat sports nerd, so I like headcanoning these things. Anyway, Silver did find the article, and I've updated the description. So if you want to refresh the page or just come back to it later and read the article that we're talking about here, that I would highly encourage that. Anyway, we got Hariman joining us once again. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good and really dry today, which I was not yesterday.
I know, we've been getting dunked on so much out here in Florida.
Send it here. We need rain. Everything's dry.
Yep.
Even our humor.
No, that's just Brony.
Unfortunately, yes. Anyway,
I've been told I have a dry wit and lots of pun.
There's dry and then there's stale.
I see Battleship Agincourt says Brony should be humbled to host Silver on the channel. First of all, it's not his first time here. Secondly, he should feel honored that I bothered to invite such a lowly peasant.
Or maybe everyone should be humbled to know that we are on the interwebs.
I know, right? That's terrifying.
Wait. Don't you mean lowly pheasant?
What I said. There. Not me.
DJ just got, that situation where he says a joke in class and nobody hears him, and then the jerk says it slightly louder and everybody laughs. Alrighty then. Before we get started, big shout out to my generous supporters on Patreon, especially on the $10 and up tier. These guys are Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministry, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, who's with us, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, who's with us, QFlash,
You're welcome.
Bentley, Henline, Alden, MacManx, yes, thank you, Cordero, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Zoro Arc 720, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Please check out all their links in the description. They make some pretty good stuff too. Anyway, Silver, start us off with some opening statements here. Let's get this ball rolling.
Well, if you don't mind, I shall read from said article. You see, when I first saw this article, I was hoping it was going to be saying that people were getting tired of anti-heroes. I feel like they've dominated our storytelling lately, and that people may be kind of hungry for good old-fashioned, just a guy who's good for goodness sake. But nope. Let's see here. Mostly this is inspired by The Boys, which I have not yet watched. So, unfortunately, I'm somewhat in the dark on this, but once a contradictory figure meant to represent both the fresh sins of modern world and a righteous crusade for justice, the anti-hero is too often written to such base extremes that it negates the very reason he first became a popular trope. Because anti-heroes can only exist in a universe in which idealized notions of heroism and the concept of good and bad still exist. Let's see here. In the comic book spawned worlds that, for better or worse, dominate the culture, popular culture, creators have tried to resurrect the anti-hero to varying degrees of success. The article goes on to point out that within The Boys, your anti-superhero group are actually pretty violent, wicked, and crazed. The leader especially is, he's just what is it? Billy Butcher, the ruthless potty-mouthed leader of the team. Assassins devoted to fighting, extorting, torturing, and killing superheroes. But on the superhero side, you have murderers, rapists, and the bland, smiling visage of Homelander, a proto-fascist. So basically, nobody is in the right. Nobody has the moral high ground. And in this world of where there is no true hero, you have Huey, our everyman, who is just trying to do the right thing when the right option just doesn't seem to exist. And while I feel like that's a scenario we all may feel we're in sometimes, I'm not ready to accept that concepts of good, right, and wrong are malleable.
Yeah, I can definitely agree there. It's also kind of a, real cynical way to look at it that I've been seeing a lot more of in recent years. And I saw it a lot, especially in anime, probably a decade or so ago, where like every other anime I watched, you'd be following the hero. They're trying to do good, and then it turns out that everyone else around them, regardless of whether or not they're on the side of good, is part of the problem or a traitor in some fact. Like Bleach was the worst one. We spent more time fighting other good guys in Bleach than we did the actual villains, that kind of thing. And so that's all just to say I see too much of it, and on a subjective level I don't really like it either. So DJ, what do you think?
Give me a minute, I need to condense my thoughts. Move on to someone else for the moment.
All right, Hariman, what do you think?
I think the current mainstream writing for heroes is garbage. And I think they're wallowing too much in nihilism and selfishness to be able to realize that, yes, there are good people out there where if you gave them even like 10% of Superman's powers or even Superman's powers, they actually would be good people and save a lot. But right now, we have heroes like, I say heroes in quotation mark, like John Wick, who is basically a mass murdering assassin who's only excused in his murderous rampage because his dog was killed and he kills criminals worse than him. And I've actually heard people say that they would rather be Lex Luthor because Superman is too high a goal to aim at because he's too perfect and nobody can reach that goal. When the whole point is, if you're aiming at Superman and you fall short, you've still made yourself better and you've still become a better person in the process.
Interesting. And Cordero, what do you think? Crud, did we lose him? Oh, there he is.
Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, coming in pretty echoey, but yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I was in an elevator just now.
Goodness.
Well,
down there.
I think that the whole anti-hero thing is overplayed, which is sort of what the article is getting at, I think. And it comes down to an idea that the article mentioned, which is that there are no heroes. There's just different shades of gray and evil, and some people may have better motivations than others, but ultimately everyone's hands are dirty, that's fine to have some stories like that, but it's so overdone, and I think it's really pretentious that a lot of these stories, and I'm not necessarily saying that The Boys has this message, but a lot of these stories are just the overall trend, and makes it feel like there is no good and evil. And I just hate it. It's like, have your niche, that's fine, but stop acting like you're expressing some kind of truth, because those old good versus evil and hero and villain archetypes, they are still valuable, and you can tell, and we have told great stories based on those.
Indeed. One theory that comes into my head as we talk about this kind of thing and why anti-heroes are especially popular in the modern day, I think it's because culturally there's, regardless of what you think about really anything, anybody you talk to is probably going to have a sense that there's like great injustice in the world. And sometimes people want to address that as aggressively as possible and solve it that way. So the anti-hero becomes a relatable sort of power fantasy of dealing with whatever your definition of evil is in the most aggressive way possible, while still being in the right. In fact, you are morally right for dealing with things as harshly as possible, because your goals are objectively right and theirs are objectively wrong. So the ends end up justifying the means is ultimately what I'm trying to say here. Would you guys like to add or take away anything from that?
Well, I can't say I'm a big fan of the ends justifying the means. I believe that you can go about a noble goal through terrible means, and in doing so, miss or perhaps taint the outcome.
Well, the question was more so, do you guys think my theory is valid? Or not?
Like what brought on the anti-hero thing? I think I don't know if this is agreeing or disagreeing with you, but what brought on the anti-hero thing was this idea that superhero stories were stale, that everything was either cartoonishly evil or cartoonishly good, which I think is wrong and a misconception. I think superhero stories have always been mostly good, especially when they're well made or well produced for young adults or adults or whatever. And I think that there was this idea that, we're sick of the cookie cutter superheroes, and this misconception led people to be like, what if we had like a dark and brooding superhero? And it's like, superheroes have always been flawed and villains have always been relatable. It's just, I don't know. It's like an illusion. It's like people felt that like, I'm adding this new thing that hasn't been done before. And it's like, no, you're not adding anything. It's always been this way. If you write a villain who's like, well, the villain actually has an understandable reason and they're just trying to do what's right, guess what? You wrote a hero. It's not an interesting take. You wrote a hero. Hey, guess what? My heroes are actually terrible people who have bad intentions. Congratulations, you wrote a villain. You're not doing anything new. You're just flipping the heroes and villains on the surface and you're pretending that you made something new. You're standing there going, "I made this." That meme.
Interesting.
If I can follow that up,
yeah.
there's been a trend that the bright and shining example or the big successful person gets torn down because they somehow don't deserve it because other people don't have the same thing as them. So it becomes this cynical cycle of anything that succeeds and is like good and even approaches anything near perfection becomes wrong, and anything trying to tear that down becomes good. Or the flawed hero example where it's like, I don't even know how to describe it. Things like The Boys become the heroes when everybody in The Boys is a villain except, like, I think Huey and Starburst, whatever her name is, the naive newcomer hero.
So
Yeah.
there's a couple of different ways we could go about the flawed hero, and I think the best one to demonstrate the point of what could be a flawed hero is a hero that doesn't necessarily know what he's doing. So his intentions are in the right place, and all that fun stuff, and he's doing the right thing for the right reasons, but. And this usually happens like more towards the beginning of the story where there are unforeseen consequences to his actions that had the hero had greater wisdom might have been able to foresee and avoid. One example that
You're describing Spider-Man right now. This is just Spider-Man.
I was going to say 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
90s Spider-Man cartoons. I was also thinking of Thundercats because I was watching a video about Thundercats.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, the other day, and that kind of reminded me of that. Old, and a
The good one.
the
good one's the new one.
Well,
Not Roar. I mean the actual reboot.
You're talking
going to
about
ignore that.
You're talking about the 2011 one.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's a different debate, but I'm talking about.
I heard that one was good.
The anime style one was good.
All right, so what I was saying was that in that one, Lion-O would, just by virtue of not being as old, as wise, as mature as the others, would be goofing off and cause problems that we'd usually end up having to spend the rest of the episode solving. So we got through it, but he kind of started the problem to begin with. He's still a hero, but he's learning. Another example of that might be, well, we already said Spider-Man, I guess. And that's a pretty good example of that. I'm trying to think of what else.
Virgil Hawkins from Static Shock.
Yeah, that's a good
started
one.
off pretty rough around the edges.
I for some reason I can't think of any specific examples, but I know that type of thing happened in the early seasons of Code Lyoko a lot too, and that one popped into my head pretty randomly there. So I think that's there's, when it comes to the flawed hero, that I think that's the best way to do it. But what we end up getting a lot more of is the anti-hero that's just sort of, ends justify the means, or there are no heroes, sort of tropes written by really just cynical people when you get down to it. Does anybody want to add or take away from what I'm saying here?
I have a great one for your example. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Aang's naivety had consequences early on, and the great thing about Avatar: The Last Airbender is that's like unanimously considered one of the most well-written children's shows of all the time, and it has definite heroes and definite villains, and they're all considered like well-rounded and three-dimensional. It is a glorious example of what you're talking about, and a good superhero and villain stories in general.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, we could even give it Korra, because while I didn't really like Korra as a character, and I felt like they, tried to make us sympathize with her after she just, gets the crap kicked out of her for all of her terrible decisions. It's still roughly the same thing. One of the best justifications I heard for Korra was that The Last Airbender was about Aang learning how to be the Avatar, and Korra was about the Avatar learning how to be human, which I think is a really interesting take. Anyway, why do people think, and I'll direct this one at Cordero, because I think he's got some interesting points. Why do people think that the old tropes of plain bad and, plain evil, your G.I. Joe, your Transformers, your just Star Wars, your cartoonishly evil, why do people have a problem with that and see the need to create no heroes, there are no heroes tropes, or flawed heroes tropes? What do you think about that, Cordero?
I think you nailed it in your phrasing of the question. You just gave examples that people's minds like to jump to, of like, oh, we're sick of the Transformers and He-Man or whatever, and they go to the most juvenile, like lowest common denominator plots they can think of, or maybe they're thinking of the old Superman cartoon, or like the 30s, maybe some 30s and 40s comics in the early days of it, and they just look at these like flat two-dimensional things, and they're like, oh, see, this is superheroes as a whole, and there you go. That's what creates the perception, and they forget about the characters in the stories that they loved, and they act like it's all part of the same problem.
How so?
How so?
Well, if there's anything to expand on that.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll give the Avatar: The Last Airbender example I gave. People are like, "Oh, I'm so sick. I sympathize with villains more. I'm so sick of superheroes and this played out genre." And it's like, what do you think of Avatar: The Last Airbender? That's the greatest cartoon of all time. Aang is a superhero. Deal with that. You are not burnt out on the superhero genre when it's done well. Period. Mic drop. Applause. Soundboard.
There.
Thank you.
I just pictured Cordero like bowing in a suit on a stage right there. Hariman, it sounded like you were trying to add on to that. What were you gonna say?
I was going to speak on the writing quality that is a major cause of the current trend toward nihilism and all gray. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I noticed is that many of the people complaining the most about how stale superhero stories are either reading the mainline books that are written by people who obviously either don't want to be on the book and are writing badly, or don't care about writing anything more than Superman punches the next villain once he recovers from kryptonite. Mm-hmm. Or they're people who actively hate Superman who write for him and write badly, or they're looking at the Hollywood movies.
We've got to deconstruct him. We have to subvert expectations.
Oh, those words. Pure evil when done wrong.
Actually, just sorry to interrupt, but one of the things I'm most tired of is the corrupt Superman, like Homelander. Even Injustice, the video game Superman. I always wonder why we're so eager to tear him down. Why isn't Batman a world conqueror?
Because Batman is the whoopee and Superman is the paragon of everything they think is wrong with the world.
Yeah, but Batman is a rich white capitalist. He'd be the perfect villain for them. Wow, I'm surprised they haven't done that yet.
Give them time.
I'm sure it's probably...
Stop giving him ideas.
Also, Superman is honestly my favorite hero. The
Thank you.
guy who has a bunch of power and chooses to do the right thing is very inspirational and respectable to me.
He's underrated, or rather over-criticized. I agree.
Something that...
Honestly, I thought this debate came about because Silver just rewatched Superman versus the Elite.
Oh god, that movie is awesome.
Oh, I love that movie.
It's one of the best Superman movies ever.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Silver.
Well, but on the topic of Superman movies, the there's Superman, All-Star Superman. And I've only seen the animated. I haven't really read the comics. But there's a scene where Luthor actually gets to see the world as Superman sees it. Microscopic vision and all. And it's a world-shifting paradigm. And one of the things that really marks a hero is not that they are simply born good or better. It's just that they look at the world in a different way. Other people see a hopeless cause, they see a challenge. Other people see danger, they may see opportunity. It's not about proving you're a better person than the next guy. It's getting people to shift their perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think I hear the similar frustration that this cynical, there are no heroes, is trying to, make cynics out of everyone.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me of one of my larger points, which is that superheroes and villains are actually written the same when done correctly. They have similar origins and similar experiences and stimuli. The difference between a villain and a hero is a villain succumbs to adversity and a hero overcomes adversity. That's it. To oversimplify it, that is the difference between heroes and villains. They should be three-dimensional, sympathetic characters who are flawed. But do they overcome their adversity, or do they succumb to it?
So
go be good writers.
Something I wanted to add on to what you guys are saying is that if you take Superman cartoons way the heck back to, I believe was it the 50s or the 40s?
You mean the Fleischer cartoons?
I believe so. Yeah, that name.
That's what I was referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, where Superman. I mean, I've only seen a couple of them, but there was Superman was fighting, mobsters down by the docks, who were doing some kind of illegal importing. He was fighting a
mad scientist with lasers.
Yeah, he was fighting a Japanese. I remember when there was a Japanese bomber trying to, I think, drop a nuke on us, and he went and stopped the nuke. And there was another one where he picked up a plane before it hit a building. And people will point to that type of thing and say, "Oh, that's flat." But I mean, I don't know, for some reason I can sort of put myself in the position of the bystander in that situation. It's like, yes, if the Japanese were trying to bomb us again, I would want Superman around I would want someone around who can just catch the bomb out of the air before it hits anything. I would want someone who could just drag the plane away from the building it's about to hit, or and do these things not happen. Are there not mobsters out there that cause problems in general for people, kind of thing? So I think there's value to be found in the simplicity of that. And if nobody has Cordero, what are you trying to say?
So you're even defending the cartoonishly flat representation. Like there's still value.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, shoot, the whole reason we're in this call together is because of Friendship is Magic, and the first 3 to 4 seasons of Friendship is Magic had cartoonishly simple lessons to them. There's just, where people have asked me all the time, when are you going to do the early seasons? There's nothing left. There's nothing to say that I could add on to it that wasn't in the episode. But that doesn't mean that it's not valid, that those basics don't need to be learned and practiced and then built on, as was tended to do in the later seasons. But let's shift gears here to...
Well, before we do...
Yes.
I'm sorry to barge in, but I had a question on those. I remember watching those old Superman cartoons. Mm-hmm. What did Superman do with the bomb, and what did he do with the Japanese pilot?
Shoot, something I don't remember. I think with the pilot, didn't he just throw him out of the cockpit?
And I'm guessing in the classic G.I. Joe trope, we see the parachute.
Mm-hmm.
Because even in that simplified presentation, which I get is for mass appeal. Superman does not kill the pilot, and he does not take the bomb and drop it on someone else. He
neutralizing.
He averts the damage without inflicting it back on others. Which even in wartime, that's a very powerful statement.
Yeah, and when those cartoons were coming out, World War II was still fresh on everybody's mind.
Yeah,
you know, there were probably veterans watching it with watching those cartoons with their 5-year-old kids going, "Gosh darn it, no, give it back to them."
So you're suggesting that the Second World War might have had something to do with people's appetite to see good conquer evil for decades?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I know, right? Grade A analysis here. This is
Yeah.
This is why I'm in the big leagues.
Obviously, you went to college.
Yeah, obviously. And it sure as heck,
crabs.
It sure as heck wasn't no BS college like Full Sail or anything like that. God forbid.
Or the
Unaccredited fake school.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, to shift gears here, let's talk about sympathetic villains for a little bit here, and why the nuance that we get in today's sort of superhero cartoons and the extra depth to it really isn't that bad either. And the primary example I was going to give for this section was going to be the first 3 phases of Marvel Cinematic Universe. I have not seen anything past Endgame, just so everybody knows. And I probably never will. But anyway.
That's phase 4.
Endgame is phase 4?
Endgame is the conclusion of phase 4, right?
No,
I thought
Endgame was the conclusion of phase 3. We're in phase 4 and about to end it with Wakanda.
Oh, okay. I thought we were in phase 5. I added 1, I guess. Okay.
Indeed. So the biggest criticism of the early MCU was that the villains were just the heroes, the same powers and everything, but evil. And people would say cartoonishly evil. Iron Man had Jebediah, and the Ironmonger, who was just, stole Tony Stark's technology for himself and tried to usurp Tony Stark. There was the Incredible Hulk fighting the Abomination. Cordero and I talked a little bit about Black Panther before the stream, but even then, and then there's also Ant-Man, and those are the Ant-Man, Doctor Strange. Those are the ones that just come into my mind off the top of my head here.
Of weak villains.
Yeah, of villains that we might have said were two-dimensional because they were just the hero but evil. But even then, you can pull depth out of that because, like what Cordero was saying with Black Panther, and correct me if I screw up what you said here. It was because I thought it was just about. I thought Killmonger was shallow because he was just about revenge, and you said yes, he was about revenge, but it was also Killmonger felt like he was doing the right thing for his people and that he was the rightful heir to the throne, being a descendant of the king or whatever. And
brother.
Yeah, exactly. So he did what he needed to do, and that he ended up being right to a certain degree in that Wakanda needed to reveal itself to the world. Did I do justice to your explanation there? I know I kind of summarized it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Killmonger is a well-rounded, sympathetic villain. He is not a two-dimensional villain, and it being a revenge story does not make him two-dimensional, especially with the way they went about it, as you described. So when you were trying to make a point that some of the early MCU had weak villains that were just like mirrors of the hero but evil, and outside of Black Panther, where I believe that's a three-dimensional villain, but in those movies like Iron Man and such, I would agree that those are weak two-dimensional heroes, but I will disagree that it's a problem.
So
I think it's fine. I think especially the example of Iron Man, we'll go with the first one, because Jeff Bridges' character Jebediah, he is a weakly written villain in the sense that he is not well-rounded. He's not sympathetic. He doesn't have deep motivations or conflicts. He's pretty much just greedy and evil and wants to take over and needs Tony Stark out of the way. I don't think it's a problem because Iron Man is about Iron Man and not just in title and main character, but Tony Stark has so much depth and intrigue to him that he carries the movie. And Jeff Bridges does a great performance as the villain. The script is really good. They make an entertaining story. So I'm okay with all of the depth being on Robert Downey Jr.'s character. And the villain is just, I'm fine with the villain just being there to do his job and be evil. It works in this sense because because remember, stories are not just one or a couple characters. They're a total package. And in the total package of, for example, Iron Man, I think what they presented was very, very good. So it doesn't bother me that the villain is two-dimensional.
Another example I was going to bring up here, I'll let you go in a second here, Hariman, was we talked about Killmonger being flat on the surface, but if you look into him, he's got a lot more depth to him. The same could be said for the Abomination in the Incredible Hulk, where that guy was about it. How to word this? The only reason the Hulk was a problem was because the government kept making it his problem. Bruce was trying to get rid of the Hulk and make it so he's not a threat to society at large. So what made Bruce Banner the protagonist there was just the fact that he's running for his own life and trying to solve his own problem there, and people keep messing with him. But the Abomination, however, was a war general that just couldn't let him go. It was just too deep-seated into his own pride. So he had to try to become the Hulk in order to defeat the Hulk. For that reason,
was the Abomination obsessed with the Hulk?
He didn't. He definitely
wasn't he just a volunteer? For the power?
Yeah, he was a volunteer. But
the one that's obsessed with him is the one we see later in the MCU. He's not the Abomination. He was going to be Red Hulk.
No, I'm talking about the if I'm remembering the movie correctly, and I gotta say that because it's been 12 or so years since I've seen it. That was the Abomination was the general that stood up to the Hulk, and in just base human form. And just, of course, the Hulk front kicked him and broke every bone in his body, and then he volunteered to undergo the process so he could become the Abomination, so he could try to fight the Hulk. So I
don't think you're wrong there. I don't think he was obsessed with the Hulk. I know the other guy in charge was obsessed with the Hulk.
I just checked. General Ross does not become the Abomination. It's another character who I think is named Emil Blonsky.
Yeah, Blonsky is Abomination.
Okay, so thank you for correcting me.
So Ross is the obsessed one, and he basically coerces Blonsky into becoming Abomination, I think.
Okay, so well that still sort of plays into the part there, where the point that I'm making of even when it seems cartoonishly simple, there's still some depth in there. You just got to know where to look. But the ultimate point I was going to make about Marvel in favor of nuance being necessary and better for entertainment as a whole is Thanos, because I would say that is the best version of Thanos that we've ever really had. Every other version of Thanos is just cartoonishly evil. I at least not that I can think of anything. Oh,
come on! You don't love him wanting to put his dick in death?
That's really it in the comics. In the comics, that's all he was about. In every cartoon he's just been evil for the sake of evil, which I never.
Based on what I know of comics, I don't know that you're correct on that he's cartoonishly evil in the comics. I doubt, but I haven't read the Thanos comics, so I don't have the knowledge to disagree with you. But my gut and my understanding of how comics are usually written at least especially from that era, is probably not.
I've never
X to down.
seen. I've never
Although
seen
he's
a.
probably right about the cartoons.
I've never seen a comic Thanos with a sympathetic motivation, and definitely not in the cartoons either. But in the movies, he's got a goal, and he's sympathetic.
He's great in the movie.
Yeah, he's sympathetic because he's lost something. He knows what he's doing is the right thing to do because he's seen what happens if he doesn't take action. And one analysis that I heard before Endgame came out was that the difference between Thanos and the Avengers in Infinity War was that Thanos was willing to make sacrifices to achieve his goal, and the Avengers were not willing to make any sacrifices. And that's ultimately why Thanos won. At least that was the analysis given for the plot, and I can buy it. I would sooner say that the Avengers made multiple strategic and tactical errors that cost them the fight, but that's a different story.
Well, both true.
Yeah. So there was that is a much more enjoyable Thanos. And when we get other villains that have that just kind of go down the wrong path, I find that to be pretty enjoyable as well. The cartoonishly evil stuff can be good when you need to just sort of, I guess, recenter your morals to understand that there is cartoonishly evil people out there in the world that are just psychopaths like that. But you also got to, for the sake of your own humanity, understand that more often than not, people have a reason for being pieces of trash like the way they are. And I was going to loop that back to Friendship is Magic, which if they didn't start the trend of villain redemption in cartoons, they definitely were one of the early pioneers of it, to do it with such frequency, and just being the best way to defeat an enemy is to make him a friend. And we got multiple, like over half of the villains, darn near 3/4 of the villains in Friendship is Magic had a face turn over the course of the show. And I always say that's a really good thing. I know I talk a lot of trash, and I got kind of a violent sense of humor, but I promise you guys, I am ultimately a peace lover. I don't want to fight anybody. And if I can resolve a situation by understanding the difference between me and you, and how to compromise and help you without hurting anything, then I would rather do that.
Yeah, you're a decent person. To your cartoon evil point, here's another common theme of these debates that comes up again, that I will make once again. It comes down to talent. Even the cartoonishly evil stuff that people get sick of and stale of, even that can be done well and have value. It really comes down to the talent of the creators of what's going on. However, to the public's larger point, or to the trends point, I guess, to throw a bone back to the other side, I can understand the fatigue on 2D cartoonishly evil, of not wanting to see that over and over and over again. But as we've given examples in this debate, there are examples of even the flat 2D stuff can be done really well and have value.
If I may, this is definitely the point I wanted to bring up, is going off. I think Cordero mentioned it earlier, that we're getting to the point where a lot of writers have, I know at least one in the industry admitted it, even though I can't remember what it was for. I think it was for Harley Quinn, where the writers have said they relate far more to the villains in these stories, and I feel like that's become much more of a concern, where people see themselves more as wanting to be like anti-villains, I suppose would be the term, where they're able to do bad things with no consequences as long as the ends are justified, as long as the ends justify the means, I guess. And it's definitely... Go ahead, Silver.
I can see why it's very easy to sympathize with the villain, because we, as you say, villains fall, they give in. And we've all had a moment in our lives where we fell. where we were hit real hard. Not everyone can claim that they got back up or rose above it. They may still be wallowing in it. I guess that's the temptation when you're writing villains. It's so relatable to fall. It's a lot harder to talk about getting back up.
Yeah,
It's
true.
It's easy, and that's not a good pattern to have. Is to take the easy route, like even as Friendship Magic has displayed. I'm pretty sure they have, is where taking the easy route does not make it correct, and it will lead to further problems down the road. And I believe we're definitely starting to see that more and more these days. Where, like, take Thanos, as great of a villain as he was, you had, in my opinion, far too many people saying he was right. He was right in his method.
That
he
was
right in his
that
ends.
was my biggest critique of that movie, is that nobody offered Thanos any counterpoints. But go ahead, yeah.
And it's just come to the point where I think that's why there's been a big disconnect with heroes these days, with the deconstructions of almost every superhero being a necessity, where people want the easy road and they see the heroes as a path blocking the easy route now. So they see themselves more in the villain role, and they want the villains to succeed, which I think has kind of thrown a wrench into the sympathetic villain, where you're supposed to understand the villain, not want to be them.
If I may?
Right.
Yeah, I know you've been holding on to a thought for a little bit, Hariman. Go ahead.
Speaking on DJ's original point, I think a major part of the problem has been a cultural shift towards nihilism and cynicism, which just rejects any kind of optimism or noble, bright view of the world, instead of the grimdark view of the world where everything is bad and it's going to stay bad because we're all bad people. But speaking on the identifying with people who kind of break and give up, I think that's why the bright, noble, optimistic heroes are rejected, is because people want to call themselves heroes for giving up and taking the easy way out, and anything that is heroic, anything that is stoic and perseveres, just completely tears down their ability to call themselves good for having given up and taken the easy way out.
I'm going to contradict you slightly here, Harriman. I think it's because that type of person wants to be called good, but they also don't want to do any work or change anything. I was going to say that in the example of Harley Quinn, those are just straight up narcissistic writers. And the reason they identify with the villains more is because they are villains themselves. And they don't want to.
I wouldn't go that far.
They don't want to. They don't want to have to change anything, and they don't want to have to admit anything about that. So they sort of project that onto the characters that they're writing. But Cordero,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So well, what did you think I was going to say, and what did you have to say to it?
You said like villains themselves, and I thought you were going to make some kind of argument about their moral character. But now I see what you're saying. Like they identify the villains because they are just like the villains. And I agree with that. And I think that it's a childlike understanding of something that they think is adult and complex, which is why that interview that DJ was talking about is so eye-rolling for me. Is like they see in the real world people who are supposed to be paragons of justice and what's right turn out to be corrupt. And they look at that and go, oh, that means that heroes are corrupt and villains are actually the good guys. They just kind of reverse it in their mind. They're like, I identify with the villains because these are actually just good people who are in bad circumstances, just like me. And it's like, and you got to know this where this is going because of what I've said already is no, you actually identify with heroes because you ultimately want someone, flawed or not, sticking up for what's right, rather the world thinks it's right or not. That's a hero. And you've been disillusioned by people who were purported to be heroes in real life and turned out to be villains, which means that it all comes down to you like heroes and you don't like villains.
Or maybe even
Which is no shit. It's actually very simple and elementary, but they think that they've stumbled across something profound and deep, and it's just like, I don't trust you to write a children's book.
Or maybe even they were heroes, but they were, telling you, they were telling you, to do something you didn't want to do, which would have probably been the right thing to do, but you didn't want to do it, kind of thing.
Which is a villain arc. A hero has a tragic fall. That's ultimately a villain arc. Again, succumb versus overcome. It's actually that simple.
Yep. I'm gonna add one thing to that, and then I I haven't heard from Silver in a bit, so I want to get his opinions. But I just watched the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen I think it was last month, actually. And one line in there said by one of the villains is, if you're not familiar with that show, there's these characters called curses, and they are spirits that kind of coalesce and gain sentience from combined human malice. Like whenever humans feel malice, it gives off a negative spiritual energy that over the course of time on various concepts kind of coalesces into into its own evil spirit.
Pink goo. Oh, sorry, I had a Ghostbusters 2 flashback there.
Yeah, so and one of the curses says, we are the true humans because we came to being based on the way that humans actually feel, where humans are always putting on a mask and they're always deceitful about how they're actually feeling. So we are the true humans, being evil spirits.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you're reminding me of here, Cordero. But Silver, I haven't heard from you in a little bit. What do you think about all of this? I know I've been ranting for a while.
Oh no, it's been very bolstering to hear everyone's thoughts, as I realize I'm not alone in thinking this way. When the topic of Iron Man came up and how Obadiah Ironmonger is not necessary to steal the show, I'm sorry, was it DJ who talked about that?
It was Cordero.
I did too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Cordero. I don't mean to miscredit. A very strange comparison popped into my head, and I've been looking it up while folks have been talking. Who here has read White Fang?
I have.
No. I don't know anything about it.
Ready? Then I will give you just a very, very quick description. White Fang by Jack London is really the story of a wolf-dog hybrid and his treatment under humanity, both cruelty and loving, depending on the people. But at the very end, we're introduced to a villain, Jim Hall, a man who was framed and sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit. He's looking to assault White Fang's family just in a fit of misplaced anger. To quote, he had not been born right, and he had not been helped any by the molding he had received at the hands of society. The hands of society are harsh, and this man was a striking sample of its handiwork. And so you end up with White Fang, who similarly was not necessarily treated well by human society. But he is fighting, well, his dark twin, in a sense, in Jim Hall. And Hall is only there for that one chapter. There's no foreshadowing. There is no introduction beyond this one chapter. But basically, he's using the symbolism of this framed convict with an abused animal to show how things could have turned out for White Fang. So I find that this story and many others like it, and these ideas, even predate comics and the debate on sympathetic villains. Plus, Jim Hall, I mean, his intentions were still violent. He had to become dog chow or kill the family.
So, expanding on this point, a good foil for a hero to face, especially in their first movie, can really help define the hero and make the hero stand out more, even if that foil is boring and two-dimensional, like Obadiah Stane. Because having that foil where the biggest difference between the villain and the hero is one doesn't care about the people around them and doesn't care how they get their goals, and the hero does, is just a really good opposition for the hero. And that, I would argue, is a lot of Batman's rogues gallery, where all of them are reacting to a varying aspect of the corruption and crime in Gotham City, and they're all making the problem worse and lashing out at everybody else. And Batman is the hero who's the only one who has decided to take his trauma and turn it into effort to improve everything.
Interesting.
Agreed. Now, I also want to open a possible can of worms here.
Okay.
Oh boy, we love
Or-
that on this show.
There's a later entry in this same article talking about female anti-heroes. The female anti-hero, as scarce as they still are, resists being a cookie-cutter figure. She is less emotionally opaque than her male counterparts, but she can be devious. She is willing to break the rules because she realizes the rules weren't created for women like her anyway. Harley Quinn, in both the DC live action and the more recent cartoon, is a prime example. But she also cites the author also cites Jessica Jones, who is, to quote, an alcoholic and a loner with trust issues, who for years was assaulted and manipulated by the mind-controlling villain Kilgrave. Her suffering is gender-specific, and when she uses her powers in ways that are less than heroic, she feels utterly human.
Is that the comics understanding? Because that's not what I got out of the TV show.
Well, I believe that the article is talking about Jessica Jones, the TV show.
Okay.
I think that article's kind of sounds a little hypocritical there, because it's like they're adding in an extra layer of their own interpretation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've never
impact.
seen Jessica Jones as being gender specific, considering he could mind control anyone.
What is the article's point? There's female anti-heroes and they're a little different than the male ones. Is that all they're pointing out?
Let's see here. Basically, that it's hard. I think they're saying that for female characters, there's a different rule set because, in a sense,
Okay.
society has never really had made space or set up rules to support them. Now,
Okay.
with Jessica,
So they get their own set of tropes and cliches then.
or
that's
rather, they can actually defy the mold much more easily.
Oh, okay.
Because there was never a mold for them to begin with.
So they're a better vehicle of deconstruction.
Quite possibly. Now, in the case of Jessica Jones, it's true that Kilgrave does use his powers of mind control on men, women, and children alike, but he specifically targeted Jessica because she was a woman. Others are crimes of opportunity, perhaps, but she was specifically targeted based
She
on
was
that fact.
specifically targeted just because of her unique situation.
I think part of being a woman is part of that unique situation.
I think
Well,
the points that the writer of the article makes regarding Jessica Jones could probably apply pretty well if you gender swapped Kilgrave and Jessica Jones, and it would just be pretty much the same thing and the same better version of an anti-hero, no matter what.
Yeah. I haven't seen the series, so I guess I don't have a comment.
I'll just have to take your word for it.
Yeah.
I'm going off the surface level reading from the article.
There's another question that I'd like to ask everybody here. Because we talked about, classic, simplified, good versus evil, the old comic book tropes, when done right, can be really good. We've talked about when that nuance and sympathetic villains and flawed heroes, when done well, can also be really good. We've talked about both of those sides of the dichotomy, but let's say, so it always comes down to talent. We always say that around here. If you've got to pick two movies to watch, or you got to pick between two movies, one of them is a really simple, good, classic example of good versus evil. The other one is sympathetic villain and all that fun stuff. I don't even have a short way to put it.
Okay.
They're both written by the same writer. They're both done equally well, all things considered. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the
It would
classic?
come down to mood, I guess, for me.
Same.
If I absolutely have to
Good.
choose, give me good versus evil. Good guys do good, bad guys do bad. Good guys oppose the bad guys because they're good guys doing good to oppose the bad.
And Silver.
I know two movies in mind, and it would probably default more to the classic good versus evil, mostly because sometimes you just need that reminder of a good standing up against the bad and the consequences thereof.
This question is too abstract for me. I'd watch Ghostbusters.
Okay. Well, I'll name my two movies. For modern sympathetic villain, understandable, I do think Black Panther did a very good job of that. You can certainly say that Killmonger had the right idea, but he then took it to a hostile extreme. And so I especially love that scene where T'Challa is pushing back against his ancestors, having been confronted with this conflict. Sure. But for good and evil and the consequences, I love Transformers, the 86 movie. Even though they killed Optimus Prime, I'm still a little broken up over that. But actually, it is the death of the old leaders that says something. Optimus Prime dies, and he's surrounded by loved ones. There's a peaceful transition of power because they want to as much honor Optimus's memory as well as respect the new leader. Megatron gets dumped into space, and all the Decepticons start infighting, everyone wanting to be the next leader. And that says something of how when a tyrant dies, everyone's scrambling over the pieces. When a good leader, someone with a moral compass and who acts with that morality, even in death, they can be an example for a peaceful transition.
I'm gonna interject real quick for the sole purpose of shameless self-promotion, because you're talking about the difference of good and bad leaders here, and that happens to be the very subject of my next video, which is moral of the story for Triple Threat. So please be sure to tune in to my channel on Sunday morning to see more about the differences between a good and a bad leader. Much like along the veins of what Silver's talking about here. But yeah, I can definitely.
Butter.
Yep. So
If I may, Brony.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
I know we mentioned earlier, but I definitely feel like in the context here where you looking between the sympathetic and the simple, essentially, I'm going to default back to if you want a movie that definitely engrosses this entire topic, it's Superman versus the Elite.
No,
Like,
I actually don't think I've seen that
earlier,
one. That was.
Oh, it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
To put it simply, it is Superman versus a group of people that are basically anti-heroes that follow no laws.
Oh, is this the one where they're British? Those are the British villains, right?
One is British.
That's right. He's got a British flag and psychic powers.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that one now.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Superman versus the Elite. The Elite are a group of anti-heroes who show up on the scene, and the world basically turns on Superman in support of them because they're getting results. No matter what means possible, it's usually bloody death. And they start pushing Superman to follow in their steps. And of course, he's refusing. He's Superman. Of course he is. And I'm going to spoil it here, but definitely go watch it because it sounds cooler than I'm going to describe it.
It's a 20-year-old movie, or not 20, but it's old. Nobody cares anymore.
Oh God! When you said 20 years old, I was like, no, it can't be that old. It's not that old.
Well, let me give the
hold on.
short summary of
Let DJ finish first.
I want to give a summary of the ending without full spoilers. That's what I want to do.
Well,
I'm
I
gonna
think
go
we
ahead and
can. I
spoil
think
it
we can
anyway.
give it to DJ.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
gonna go ahead and spoil. They have a fight, of course. Superman is facing the group of anti-heroes. They beat him up, and then he decides to snap. He starts acting like them, and it's all televised, so the world sees what happens when Superman acts like an anti-hero, and it scares them. It scares everybody. It is horrifying to watch, and it shows that, at least to me, it shows that just because things turn out right in the end, the methods are going to have an effect. And it shows why Superman is important, and it's important to do things the right way. Because no matter what you've been told, there are many times where there is a right way to handle things. And I think it's a movie that encapsulates everything that is great about Superman. Of course, tacking on All-Star Superman, as Silver mentioned earlier, that's also a good follow-up to that one. And it shows that the values of Superman are eternal. No matter what anyone tries to deconstruct, no matter the issues they have with him, there are things about Superman that are just part of human existence that people really should take to heart.
Yep. So I'm going to be the minority here and say that I would prefer a more nuanced storytelling. I will fully acknowledge that generally speaking, the culture has gone too far in the other direction, and or at the very least, there's too many examples of there are no heroes, or people trying to make the villains super sympathetic, so you feel bad for them. I can fully admit there's too much of that, but I still prefer it. Because it does give that little bit of depth and make me think, and mostly what I think about in those situations is what would I do? And what that does is it helps me prepare for the future if I ever run into, I'm not going to get into any kind of superpowered fights, but, what would I do in a similar situation where I'm met with, the lesser of two evils? How would I find a way to not choose, or to find a good way, so I think about that kind of thing, and maybe I'm weird. In fact, I'm not even going to bother. I know I'm freaking weird. But that's,
You know what?
He acknowledges it.
But that's where I get my entertainment from. I like I like thinking on that level and meditating on that kind of thing.
Because you're an intellectual. I've decided that I hate the question. I've now come around. I completely hate the question, to where it's like, what are you talking about? The simple is sympathetic, and vice versa. That's been my whole point tonight. Like, back to the Black Panther Killmonger thing. Black Panther is 100% the hero. Simple. Killmonger is 100% the villain. Simple. Everyone watching the movie will draw that out of it. But at the same time, they're well-rounded characters. They're sympathetic. Killmonger has good. They're the same thing. If you do it right, if you're talented, the simple is sympathetic. Like, it's not a one or the other. If you're choosing between that are one or the other.
Oh geez, we lost him. He got so mad he shorted out his own connection.
His anger has muffled him.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
I think
The last thing I said was, if you're choosing between two movies, one is simple and one is sympathetic, you're choosing between two bad movies.
Mm-hmm.
I take too much issue with Black Panther these days, because there were so many people that said Killmonger was right, and it just got on my nerves.
There were so many people that said Thanos was
too.
right.
Well,
Yeah,
Thanos was factually wrong. Things get better as population increases, and nobody called nobody ever called Thanos out on that or offered any kind of counterpoint, because the writers believed that themselves.
And they made it.
That's how you know they wrote a good villain. That's how you tell that somebody wrote a good villain, is when dumb people say, "Actually, they're right."
Yeah, I can definitely.
He's a villain.
But
yeah,
I mean, I can agree they're good. It just gets on my nerves.
Well, not against there's a quote from a book that I always find appeals. Just because they point out a flaw doesn't mean that they're right. Any criticism they have of us does not necessarily mean that they're in the right. I forget the exact wording, but the sentiment I agree with. You can have a villain make a genuine point against society, but at the same time, their solution is not right by default.
Right.
Well, in the Black Panther movie, the issue is that Killmonger is going about helping the rest of the world with Wakandan technology the wrong way, and people who are hurting other people are getting empowered. And
valid criticism does not excuse villainous behavior, which has always been the point of superhero movies.
So Thanos is on the hunt, to assemble the Infinity Gauntlet, and he's got to kill half of all living things in order to restore balance to the universe. With the Infinity Gauntlet, he could have just as easily doubled all of the resources.
Yeah, I've heard that one a million times. But yeah.
One thing I've not heard people point out. No one asked him, so are you subject to this culling? Well, no, I'm the last Titan. Oh, how convenient.
Yeah. That was one of his major points too. Oh, but it's gonna, I'm gonna wipe out everybody. I'm gonna wipe out half of the population of the universe, but at random, so it's not discriminated by race or creed or wealth or anything like that.
But I don't think Thanos understands how 50% random probability works. If you're the last one, that doesn't exclude you. That means it's a coin flip, whether you go or not.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he doesn't factor in the death. For me, it was the line, "I'll go to bed on a grateful universe." It's like
I'll watch the sunrise on a grateful universe. Yeah.
Yes. It's like no one's going to thank you for this.
What a douche.
Yeah, when you get down to it, like, think of all that, because we saw in those movies, he did the snap and like airplanes were dropping out of the sky and trains were crashing and cars were crashing. He probably really actually killed something closer to like 65% when you factor in all the collateral damage of the rapture.
Can you imagine a doctor just vanishing in the middle of a vital surgery and half the staff in that room vanishing?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
The person who's giving up their kidney to someone who needs it is suddenly gone. The cab driver going 100 miles an hour to get someone somewhere in a hurry is gone, and there's a family in back who's desperate to meet someone.
Every plane that crashed was half full of people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So unless everybody on that plane is getting vanished, he's probably killed like 60 to 70% of people.
And even if they did, the plane's going to crash and most likely kill more people.
Yeah.
What's it crashing?
So he's basically, no one called him, no one really pointed out his own plan was heavily flawed, biased, and short-sighted.
Until the What If series, and they didn't do it very well.
Well, that was way too much of a love letter to T'Challa.
Yeah.
It's like, dang, okay, I like Star-Lord T'Challa too, but really?
Come on.
Alrighty then. So let's see here. Does anybody else have anything they want to add or take away before I move on to audience participation?
We get it. He died and it's sad.
Alrighty then.
I gotta have an insensitive joke every time.
Oh,
sensitivity. They should have recast him, not let him die.
Great.
There's my hot take.
They should have cast me to play Black Panther. I would have made a great Black Panther.
I think you're the
I can think of worse casting.
Yep. Well, we just had Ariel in the recent weeks here, so yeah, I'm going to be Black Panther.
Chris Tucker is Black Panther.
No. Chris,
that would be interesting.
You know what I want? I want to see Steven Seagal as the Black Panther.
Oh, he's too old. He's like 70, 80.
That's the point. I wanted to be
cast Blade as
okay,
Black
fair.
Wesley Snipes? No, we did Wesley Snipes. I've never heard anything good about working with him.
People love the Blade movies, though.
I guess
At
so.
least the first one.
Alrighty then. Angel of Speed says, speaking of anti-heroes, they, along with anti-villains, can either be villain protagonists or hero antagonists depending on their role in the story. Alright, I don't really have anything to add to that. Cosma Inspira says, I always felt that when writing heroes and or villains, part of it is understanding psychology and some personal philosophy to make three-dimensional rounded characters. So, Cordero was saying that's how you know you've written a good villain is when stupid people agree with them. And a point that I was going to get to that sort of goes along with what Cosmina Inspira, I'm going to pronounce names correctly, is saying here, is that the writers never bothered to contradict Thanos or offer a counterpoint because they themselves believe that depopulation is the right way, but they know it's wrong. So that's why you got a lot of people saying what I would do in a situation like that, where I believe wholeheartedly that either my hero or my villain is, I would actually talk to somebody who takes the other side and get what they think, so that way I can write a three-dimensional hero or villain, just contrarian in whatever way, and make sure that they both get to say their piece before the actual fight, instead of just, we need to destroy half the universe in order to save the rest of the universe, and everybody just says, oh, but then people will die, and then we start fighting.
I'll give the writers the benefit of the doubt on this one and say that the counterpoint is so obvious, or should be so obvious, that they felt they didn't have to state it. Because, like, imagine if the universe consented. The universe consented, and half of the universe was willing to sacrifice the other half for everyone's continued survival. Well, then the half that lives doesn't deserve it. And that's the obvious point. If you have to kill half of everybody to save the other half, like, you don't deserve your own salvation then. So everybody would rather take the risk that we all lose our resources and starve, rather than do something as horrific as kill half of everybody. And to their credit, I think that that's just so fucking obvious, or should be, that they didn't need somebody to argue that to Thanos, because it would have fallen on deaf ears anyway.
The fact that it's not obvious is a sign of just how much the culture has gone into cynicism and nihilism.
There you go.
Paladin Pony T says, hey Brony, have you considered that early MCU villains were meant to show what heroes could be if they go bad? Yes, I have considered that, and I think my points about it still stand. Let's see here. Todd Hunter says, the hero isn't the fastest, strongest, or smartest, or the best looking. The hero is the one who, no matter what the odds, does what they know is right, even if the whole world is against them. And the first thought I had in my head when I read that was Moomin Rider.
Well said. You made the woman joke this time.
I'm going to bring that up as what people should watch if they want to see a really awesome Superman story. And that is to watch One Punch Man.
Yeah.
Was season 2 any good? I've only seen season 1.
Season 2 has somewhat not as good animation as the first season, but the animation is still good. People are just really hard on it for some reason.
Is the writing still good?
Yes. Oh, the writing is still great.
There's actually more continuity.
Past the animation, then.
I so look forward to the third season, which will continue the current arc.
Brony, don't think I didn't hear you say continuity. You owe me a quarter.
All right.
That is a wet sound effect.
So Todd Hunter also said, what about Megamind and Titan? So that was a really good movie.
Was that a deconstruction, though?
It might have been. Yeah, you think so?
I think it qualifies. It's a good one, though.
I think Megamind is actually a reconstruction of heroic tropes. while also deconstructing having the wrong motivations to be a hero and the wrong understanding of what a hero is. Because Megamind gets taught poorly because he ends up landing in a jail, and Titan is a selfish little brat who gets power and decides to become a tyrant. Whereas Megamind...
Go ahead.
Whereas Megamind, through his infatuation with the girl and eventual love of the girl, and through facing his own creation gone wrong, realizes what it actually means to be a hero. And that he needs to protect everyone instead of opposing Metro Man.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking, because it doesn't really tear down the hero trope. If anything, it almost reinforces that being a hero is the better option.
Yeah, it's very much actually a reconstruction of the hero genre, but it does it by flipping Superman and Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor
there's also
wants to be a hero, and Superman becomes a villain.
What were you going to say?
There's
Cordero?
a misunderstanding. There's a misunderstanding of what a deconstruction is. A deconstruction doesn't mean you have to take a piss at what you're deconstructing. You could. That seems to be what most people do when they're trying to deconstruct something. But it just means that you break it down and you look at it a different way. And so, like, the reason I say Megamind qualifies as a deconstruction is because it's kind of breaking down the superhero tropes and looking at them a different way and giving you a new look at it, but it's still ultimately reinforcing the ideal that circles back around to what a hero is and what a villain is, and that's a good deconstruction that doesn't have to be superior to what it's breaking down.
Alrighty then. Pal and Pony Tree. Did you have something, Hariman?
Yes.
Okay.
You're right that Megamind deconstructs a lot of the hero tropes, but there's a trope called the decon-recon switch, where something that deconstructs a genre will, at a point in the middle of it, switch to becoming a reconstruction. And I think that's where we're hitting the butting heads with each other, where you're looking at the first part where it deconstructs the normal tropes, and I'm looking at the second part where it rebuilds the hero being the hero, with Megamind realizing that he has to protect the world and the city.
Yeah, that's true. It circles back around, so it's probably that one, the one where it's both.
It's a good movie. It does both half of its story well.
Also, on the topic of deconstructions, especially as I mentioned, my fatigue with Superman Gone Bad. In a lot of those stories, it's clearly not Superman. Watchmen is a world without Superman. I believe someone in the chat mentioned Overly Sarcastic Productions and their comment on it. And they made the point that Watchmen is a world without Superman to guide the way. There is, I'm linking now, a comic, just one panel comic, of Homelander versus Superman. And it's clear who the winner is without even a punch being thrown.
That turned into the plot of Doomsday Clock, wasn't it? Where Dr. Manhattan knows the problem with his universe is that it lacks a Superman.
I'm afraid I haven't read that, so I'm unsure.
I'm not surprised. It took like 5 years to finish. But from what I remember of it, Dr. Manhattan was behind all the like retcons in the DC Comics universe, which I'm pretty sure they've retconned that away. But Dr. Manhattan and the Watchmen universe is essentially dying, and he uses the last of his power to recreate it, this time introducing a Superman to the universe to hopefully let it go on a better path.
But it's those stories like Injustice or Kingdom Come, where suddenly they're like, oh, Superman was the real menace all along. It's like, no, he isn't. stop trying to force it.
Kingdom Come did not actually go down that road. Kingdom Come had Superman snap and pretty much go to kill the I forget whether it was Congress and the Senate or the UN, because they decided to launch a nuke at the heroes and killed a lot of people.
The nuke did, or Superman did?
The nuke did.
Oh, okay.
So that actually was a really well told tale where Superman, I hate to spoil it, but he almost snaps in the end and almost kills them, and he is stopped before he does. Which is why it's such a great comic, and you should read it because there is so much more to it than what we can talk about here.
Here's I have a question that I just thought of. I'm curious. Silver, what did you think about the Man of Steel movie with Henry Cavill?
That's one where saving the world wrecks a bunch of stuff, yeah?
Yeah, and it's not just that, but then Superman snaps Zod's neck at the end of the final fight.
One, I was always thinking, family deers, you can move to the right just a skosh. You can duck. He's got a pretty good grip. I think you can duck and crawl out there. So those people are idiots. That's my first commentary. I've always been a little unsure. I mean, there are situations where Superman can't save the day. In fact, one of the best points I heard in response to all the Superman critiques, the Man of Steel goes to bed every night, still able to hear all the people in the world crying out for help. In a sense, even with one man, he can't change everything. He can't stop every wrong, even though he's Superman. So in a sense, every night he has to confront a sense of failure. I'm not against them introducing that idea in the story, but it just seems such an engineered way of doing it that I wasn't too impressed.
And
I give it some leeway since it is a beginning Superman and not the Superman we know. I give it some leeway.
And again, I thought those families were stupid. Really stupid.
What are you saying, Hariman?
I forgot what I was going to say. So I'll go on to the Man of Steel issue that I was going to say before that. Bad writing. Horrible writing.
Nobody disagrees, but it's the question of, the ultimate. What the movie posed to you was the question of, you have to. The only way to stop me, to stop me from killing everything you care about, is to kill me. But you don't want to kill me because it goes against your morals. What do you do in that situation? And I'm gonna get pretty real here right now. I've been in similar situations myself. And there's no, to say that they suck that situation sucks does injustice to, is a gross understatement. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And, as much as I, bragged about being a peace lover, having been through what I've been through, I see the point. And sometimes I look back and wish I had done things differently. There are times I chose peace when I should have chose violence and created much more problems for myself and my family down the line. So, and then going forward, and some of my friends, when they hang out with me, they'll hear me say things like, "Oh, if that happens again, if I see something like that, someone's going to go down in the harshest way possible." That is the voice of experience speaking. So it's sort of, that's which is why like I said earlier, I prefer that nuance, because it at least gives you a chance to meditate about it and decide where your morals are, and gives you some foresight into the consequences of the situation. So maybe instead of finding myself in a situation, not if I ever find myself in a situation where I have to choose violence in order to get a better outcome for the people that I care about, then I'll be more ready to do so. But I might also be able to foresee that situation coming from further away and have more opportunity to divert away from it.
So
Also, a good
part of
voice experience.
Go ahead, Hariman. Hold on to that thought there, Silver.
So in my perspective, part of growing up and being a true adult is understanding that everybody both has their limit where they will snap and lash out at other people, and everybody in the world has the capability of doing great harm and horrible things to each other. And to be a true adult, you have to understand that, and you have to not only accept that, but you have to be willing to control that and only bring out that ability to harm others when it is absolutely necessary, to be a balanced whole person as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the point that it's... I'm going to use the example of the movie Falling Down, where the good guy in the movie has to kill the bad guy at the end. And he doesn't want to, but the issue is forced, and he has to do it, and he has to live with that. But it's still the right thing to do, given what he knew at the time. And there are situations where violence is the best option, and that's usually when the other person has already chosen violence and is not going to accept any lesser solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that is the ultimate Superman question: is what happens when you've got someone as strong as Superman, who is going to kill more people, and there is no way to stop him. Peacemaker, John Cena's character had the same question. There's a clip out there of him talking with an old man neighbor as he's off to go do a mission. The guy says, "Where's your rogues gallery of supervillains?" And John Cena turns around and goes, "They're all 6 feet under, because unlike Batman, I actually do my job." And and he fights. Batman, on the other hand, fights with clowns, puts them in jail. They break out and they kill more people. How many people has Batman indirectly killed by not taking out the psychopaths who are gonna do what they're gonna do?
It's not Batman that's killed them. Batman is trying to fix the broken society that refuses to take responsibility for the monsters that are running rampant. If there were actual justice and society wasn't broken in Gotham City, like the Joker and all the other people who've killed like dozens, if not hundreds of people, would either be welded into a cell for the rest of their lives and guarded so well that they never get out, instead of being sent to the revolving door Arkham Asylum, or they would be put into an electric chair or in front of a firing squad or in a noose, and they would not be the problem again. It is society that kills so many people, not Batman for not taking the responsibility that the police and the government in Gotham City should have taken before it got that bad.
Mm-hmm. But
so it shouldn't be Batman's problem, but it is ultimately Batman's problem, and he fails at it.
Yeah, because that is the ultimate. That's the ultimate debate there, and we could have a whole nother stream on that debate itself, because the counter argument to that is Batman is in the position here and now to solve the problem, but doesn't, and we could probably say the same for Superman. Or if I go back to my own life experiences here, if you guys don't mind my getting graphic, my older brother put a hunting knife against my neck, okay? And in that moment, I made the decision not to defend myself. So it is not only a miracle that I'm alive, but because I didn't defend myself, my brother is still around causing all kinds of problems for my family. I should have defended myself and by extension my family. That kind of thing. And that's the that's my ultimate point here of in favor of the modern version of heroes and their merit and why I think they're good. And like I acknowledged earlier, we definitely take it too far in the other direction. But that's where I think the value of it is asking those questions and having those debates.
I don't think there was a right choice with your brother, because any way you tackle that, someone's going to be hurt and there's going to be lasting harm, whether it be from your brother still hurting the people around him or from you having put him in the hospital or worse. That I don't think there's any good solution there.
And it is something of a what-if game. You can't know what the outcome would have been otherwise. You can't take responsibility for that alternate reality.
Yeah. Either way, I appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable and sharing that. As a big deal.
Well, it was 5 years ago. I should be over it by now, and for the most part, I am.
Shoulds or shits?
It's not the trauma that changes; it's our ability to deal with it.
Indeed.
Yeah. So don't play the
also.
Yeah.
Also, for trauma like that, no, 5 years is not just going to fix that. I actually think you should see counseling about that. Like, unironic opinion.
Yes.
Alrighty then. Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Paladin Pony T says, Brawny Buck, you should go and read or listen to Shadow of the Conqueror by Shad M. Brooks. It's about a former villain who tried to redeem himself, but I will warn you, it goes some dark places. And I have no idea what he's talking about. Does anybody else know that book?
Well, I do not, but I'm intrigued.
All right, so we'll take a. But I have seen that writing prompt a couple of times of the guy who was once a villain, and now is trying to redeem himself and just wrestles with the inconvenience of doing the right thing. Rather, like, oh my God, I know so many ways to just end this situation right now in the worst way possible, but I'm gonna do the right thing. How dare you make me have morals? Kind of thing. You know what? I'm surprised, Cordero. We should have gotten the Equestria Girls movie where Sunset Shimmer goes through that part of redemption, where it's like that should have.
I'll just write it.
There should have been a movie between Equestria Girls and Rainbow Rocks where Sunset's in a position where she has to do the right thing, but she knows darn well if she chooses violence, this whole thing would be over really quickly.
Well, honestly,
go ahead, Silver.
When it comes to Rainbow Rocks, I honestly think she could have taken that approach to the Sirens. I mean, you knock them out, gag them, and cart them off. And
well, she never would have done that. She never would have done that to the Sirens. She was a sociopath. She manipulated the society around her to do her bidding through blackmail and through just general, various forms of manipulation. So she wasn't the physical fighter kind of bully. At least not until Twilight was was headed towards the portal with the crown, And even then, she wasn't. When I was first watching that movie, I was like, "Oh my God, is she gonna take that? Is she gonna freaking swing at Twilight with the sledgehammer?" Oh no, she's threatening the portal. Okay, yeah, that's right. TVY7, we're good.
Before we go too much further, though, I wanted to offer two stories. One about Superman and killing, sort of but I forget the comic. There's a comic where I think it's Mr. Mitch's Pitlick has flipped. I mean, he's actually become violent and dangerous, and the whole comic is talking as if it's the day Superman dies. And I'm sorry, I have to spoil this. Superman kills Mr. Mitch's Pitlick in the comic to save everyone, but then he also gives up being Superman because he's saying, I've crossed the line. I can't be that symbol anymore. And he that's the responsibility he accepts for that action.
There was a similar situation with Batman, where Batman was riding Joker down to the police station to book him once again, and the whole time Joker's talking about exactly how he's going to escape and how Batman's not going to be able to do anything about it. And as soon as he escapes, he's going to go kill pregnant Lois Lane. And Batman pulls up to the police station with Joker and just snaps his neck in the car, and then goes in and turns himself in.
That was the what if version of Injustice, wasn't it?
That I don't remember, but I know I've seen it around.
Oh, I found it, Silver. It was called "Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow."
Ah, danke. The other points was from a much lesser known, or at least less talked about 80s cartoon called Dino Riders.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for a gasp of recognition. I'm not hearing it.
I mean, I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about it.
What I didn't know at the time was that this was actually a series of videos, not just two. But at the very last video, the leader of the good guys and the Dino Riders, he's in a fist fight with the leader of the enemy. Very subtly named the Rulons, and they're all inhuman monsters, literally.
Mm-hmm.
The villain has an atmosphere helmet. He can't live in an oxygen environment. So when the hero has the chance to fully rip that off and kill him, he acknowledges, this could, it'd be so easy to do this right now, but our way is not to take a life, and he relents. And I think when I saw that scene, I thought, that's stupid. You're in an environment where you can't hold him prisoner, and taking him off the board is the only way you might be able to destabilize your enemies and give your people a chance to regroup from this war. It's terrible. I'm not saying feel good and be proud of it. In fact, you may have to step down as leader because you can't follow those ideals, but that might be the sacrifice play.
Yeah.
So it was one time where I think even as a kid, I would have thought that didn't make sense.
Yep. So, real quick here, Magical Dude says, by my logic, do I think that Twilight and the Main Six should have killed Discord since he keeps messing up and causing problems after his quote-unquote reformation? That's a good question.
No.
I don't think Discord should have ever been released, but I don't think you can kill the abstract comedy, the abstract concept, I went to college, of chaos, which is what he's supposed to be. So I mean,
you can just make him act normal.
Yeah, that exactly right.
Yeah,
So,
sure you can.
what were you going to say, Cordero?
I don't think he did near enough harm to even bring up the idea of killing him. Like after post Reformation, he's just like he's mischievous.
He's Vegeta.
Like he's like a well-behaved Loki, or something.
Discord is like Vegeta.
Not even close.
He's
Here, I've got the answer to this one. No. Next question.
That's the last question I've got is unless you guys saw anything you wanna address is Jasper Flair says Ready Player One has a villain that was good. Or the villain was good. Does anybody know anything about that? I haven't read that book or seen that movie.
I saw that movie.
I should see that movie.
It was
I've
an
heard
interesting movie.
I can't comment on this one.
And I think what he means is that the villain was ultimately supposed to be the good guy, but he was portrayed as the villain throughout the. No. Okay.
No.
I think it's more that the villain was threatening and kind of a shadow of the protagonist. He knew similar pop culture.
Okay.
And so they both had a passion for the 80s. However, he had essentially sold his soul for a corporate position. And he took shelter in that he could afford the best lawyers in the world to get him out of trouble.
A thought that just occurred to me is I would encourage everybody to look at the YouTube series What's the Difference, that takes like famous movies that are adaptations of books and just literally looks at the difference between them. And a pattern that I often notice is that the book versions of these movies, the characters have no redeeming qualities about them. They're just, everybody is a horrible person. And also the books usually have bad endings, like unhappy endings, where the movies will resolve things with it. And the two examples that are coming to my head are Ready Player One, which had a very cynical ending, if I remember that video correctly. And what was the... God darn it, they made a movie of it. It was it had Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Might have been Ender's Game. Or, no, Total Recall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Total Recall had a really bad ending in its book version, and
the story of Total Recall in the short story version was the guy goes into the memory implant office to get a Mars vacation put in, and when they have him under to put in the new memories, they find what they think is a previous memory of that he had already put in but had forgotten about.
Okay.
And just like blanked on.
Yeah.
Where he'd saved Mars and the Martians were going to award him with a thing when they came back, and he was already a hero. So they wipe what they think is a second set of false memories, and they put his vacation memories in, send him out, and after he comes out of the shop, either a car comes up or a UFO lands or whatever, or an alien comes up to him and says, I'm the alien from this. I'm here to give you this for being the hero. And he can't remember it because they wiped the memories. And I think one of the staff is there to witness it and realizes that, oh, that was actually real. Shit.
So, there was another one. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, the one where he's on a game show. I can't remember titles for the life of me. But it's like a super violent Running Man. Yeah, that one had a really bad ending in the book too. Anyway, I got to get moving here. Last thing of the night here. Battleship Agincourt says, Silver, you are my hero and I want to hatch your eggs. What are your thoughts on that?
Interesting that you assume that a hippogriff relies on eggs, even though the latter half is mammalian tertiary.
Yeah, that's the question. Alrighty then. So, if nobody else had anything they wanted to add or saw any chat that they wanted to address, 3, 2, 1. Okay.
I have one.
Yes,
Just
go
one.
for it.
Oh, no, why can I not find it? Someone's saying that the rules of heroes... here we are. Todd Hunter, the rules of hero apply to both men and women. I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, I think it's also important to note that there are social factors for men and women. And so how a hero confronts those is a very real factor. So I think that's worth consideration.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think there's a lot that goes into characterization like that. Alrighty then. So real quick, let's go around the table here. Final thoughts and one thing you learned, DJ.
Final thoughts is I hope that the pendulum will start to swing back a little bit more to where we can have both complex and simple villains that everyone can enjoy, and heroes too. And thing I learned is I need Silver's library at this point. I need to know how many books this man reads.
Not as many as it may sound. I mean, I'm remembering Jack London from way back.
Cordero. I'm sorry, but Cordero, go ahead.
I learned that heroes are good, villains are bad, and if you like a character, for better or worse, it's probably because you see a part of yourself in them. And tonight I learned that griffins are mammals.
All right.
Or are they? Dun dun dun.
So, Silver, final thoughts and one thing you learned.
I'm glad that I feel like we all had different takes, but they all fell under the purview of we still believe in our heroes. We aren't looking to tear them down. One thing I learned is that, sometimes we deceive ourselves. It's like, oh, I like this complex hero. No, that character's a villain. And it's important to, spot the difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very true that we see ourselves in the fall, but we sometimes, even as writers, we lack the courage to explore what would happen if you stood back up.
Hariman.
My final thought is I can't identify with characters that give up, or the mentality that giving up and settling for anything less than striving for the most heroic thing possible is heroic, because I've spent a lot of my life just getting back up from being punched and knocked down again. So that just doesn't make any sense to me. And I learned a lot, so I can't pin down any one thing. There's a lot of perspective here, and I love perspective.
Mm-hmm. My final thoughts is that I desire balance and I desire quality. Those are that, and I think no matter which direction you take, that as long as you have balance and quality, then I will enjoy it regardless. But as for what I learned, I really liked. Yeah, I really liked Cordero's point about how if it's done right, it all ends up being the same thing. I'm going to have to take that away and meditate on that for a while, because that's something I never thought about, that it may just, be different paths to the same peak of the mountain. So I'll thanks Cordero for making that point. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. This has been a nice long debate. I should know better than to get Silver Quill, Hariman, DJ, and Cordero in the same call and expect it to be an early night. There have been plenty of experiences to learn that lesson, and I haven't quite internalized it yet. But did you guys all have fun tonight?
Yes.
I had a great time.
Good.
Very much.
I'm glad. I saw Heather was mad at me for being late for dinner, so I better go get to that as soon as possible. While I'm on that Battleship Agincourt, quit simping over my wife, if you would so kindly. So shout outs to all of my generous supporters on Patreon, especially those on the $10 and up tier, such as my lovely wife who made me some delicious sopa and potato tacos that I'm about to go devour. There's also Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, who's with us, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, who's with us, QFlash, Billy, Henline, Alden, MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto, Acrylic, VA, Sorok 720, Mr. Sonic 31. Why do you people put numbers in your names? Ridge the Hedgehog, Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Check out all their stuff in the description if you want to hang out with me some more. Tomorrow night, I'll be on Princess Heather Blossom stream at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, hanging out, reading the chat while she's doing some crocheting. And then next week, we're going to play some kind of video game. I don't know what. Odds are I'll be really bad at it. Come watch me be really bad at video games. If you want to be on the show, I'd love to have you. Get on my Patreon for $1 a month, and you can come and watch me. You can pick the games that you can watch me be really bad at and help me pick the topics for these discussions. With that all said, have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. God bless. Say goodnight, everyone.
If you're gonna simp, send money.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.